So those are 4 great case studies. I'll just ask everyone to come up for the case studies. So we're just going to do a panel discussion, and for the panel discussion, we're going to keep it. We're going to do a lot more Q&A and discussion here. So we're going to open it up. I just have a couple of questions. In the meanwhile, we are putting up the answer to some of the last question we asked. So which objectives does procurement technology help meet? And so it looks like everything right now. And it is something I'd like to drill in when we talk next with the panel. If we go to the next question, please. So the next question is, please indicate how effectively procurement technology has helped you identify capable suppliers and create meaningful competition. So if you could take a minute to respond to that while we gather here. Genty?
I'm still trying to follow Bob Gleason. No.
So I'd like everyone to just get their questions ready too, and because I do want to make this very interactive. I feel like that's one of the feedback points I'd give to ourselves. There's not enough time built in for discussion, which is always one of the most valuable things. So we see questions coming in here, or some of the answers coming in. So seems like technology in some ways helps create meaningful competition and identify capable suppliers. So that's a good thing. So that might be a good segue here. I feel odd standing over here, so I might pull up a chair in a minute. But I want to go ahead and get started. You guys you all shared some really good examples. I know we talked about a lot of benefits, but what if we really kind of boiled it down to one benefit? If we really prioritize, and in 30 seconds or less, I want each of you to see and tell us, what single benefit that you think is that you derive from your implementation. You can start, sure. Shane, sorry.
Okay.
And we can bring this mic up. So, go ahead, Jen.
Oh, who's me?
Shane, go ahead.
All
sure.
right, great.
Anybody jump in.
All right. Yeah, we're wondering who's going to go, right? So one single benefit, 30 seconds or less. How about I focus on a new benefit? And, I think we have such a long history in the grand scheme of things when you're talking about an e-procurement initiative that, the benefit that we're leveraging now is probably our data and what we can collect. And again, I love the term from the gentleman this morning. When you do spend analysis, it's spent analysis. So you're too late sometimes to the party. Certainly that can tell you things, but the concept of trending, forecasting, identifying where we need to be doing new contracts, identifying non-compliance, identifying where, we have folks where we can look at millions and millions and millions of rows of data, and we collect data from systems even outside of EVA, and our ability to point at matching products and say, why didn't you use or compete this, or why didn't you use a vendor that was already in the system? So this idea of taking our data and not only just identifying savings, but helping us identify new ways to do business, new technologies we may want to implement, the way we manage our contracts, that is really one of the new benefits. And I think we're, as an organization, as a state, just scratching the surface of how that data is going to allow us to audit, identify savings, identify new contracts, identify new types of technologies we want to implement. That would be the thing for the Commonwealth. So kind of focusing on something new and not something that's existing.
I was about to buzz you, but
yeah, I could sit here, I could talk forever if you get me going.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So trust in data. So accurate trust in data gives me 100% portability. I have no issues with lock-in. I have the ability to decentralize the delivery of government services to the individual level, or the entity level, whatever. But my point being, decentralized delivery of government service on the basis of data that I have trust in, no vendor lock-in, 100% flexibility to change my microservices to meet business process changes, to meet regulatory changes, to meet public policy changes, you name it.
Right. So 2 data so far.
Okay, I'm going to be a little different here. So I would say that the biggest benefits to government resulting from procurement technology are consistency. So if you have a technology tool, people can't all do it differently. Makes it very difficult for suppliers to interact with different agencies across a big state government because we all do it differently. So consistency. The other thing I would say is simplicity, because of automation and standardization, consistency. And then finally, transparency. So we'll be able to now see how everyone else across the Commonwealth is doing it, because when they were issuing paper versions, it was impossible to see and read what every state agency is doing. So we'll have better transparency as well.
Great. Genty?
I'm going a higher level. The entire procurement profession has been elevated in the eyes of our customers, as well as our leaders and board members and executives. We are at the table talking the language, because when you talk to our customers, they are very efficient with their operations. When you look at us as a service department, we're very bureaucratic and we are so regulatory. They look at us as a roadblock. So through this implementation, we believe that we have come across to them as a dedicated team of people who are willing to enhance our business to make their business better. So transparency is big, because with paper processes, it's very hard to decipher data. Second thing is the automation of the procurement process to allow departments to do their work while we are a body to guide and be in a consultant role has elevated our position much better. And of course, doing it in SaaS, we have control over our attorneys as well as our IT people, because we rule.
Great. Well, that's good to hear. I always want to hear procurement rules. So I'm just going to have one more question for everyone. So technology projects, as we know, are seldom simple. Often they run way over. It seems like there's a couple examples here of faster implementation, so that's good to hear. I'd like you to share your thinking on how do we keep things simple? So how do we avoid multi-year implementation cycles? Because we know all the benefits everybody's speaking to. We don't want to delay those, right? And we want to start to realize. So how do we keep things simple? How do we get on a path to really starting this journey? If we're thinking and avoid, honestly, the typical procurement process to procure technology. So, sure.
All right, here we go. Okay. Yeah,
Or
buzz
jump
me.
in, please jump in.
Yeah, buzz me again if I go long. So the idea behind this, I mentioned it a little bit when I hit our case study. Our philosophy, now again, I mentioned we've been around since 2001, so we're pretty robust now. But the concept, if you're at the beginning stages of this, phased approach, pick something you're good at. Looking at your organization or a set of organizations or your agencies that you're going to pilot with, or the organization that you're going to pilot with, what's the most immediate need? Identify it, do it, and be really good at the basics of that. You can get tangible benefits and value from being small. We get caught up so much. I rattled off like 15 things we do, right? Well, we didn't start that way. And if we started that way, we would have failed. If you do too much. So again, identify what you're good at or where you need to be good at. Potentially identifying pilot agencies or groups to work with. Deliver that value for that particular item, and then grow from there.
That's great advice. Jump in, please.
We just finished our implementation of the entire suite, and the lessons learned there was, even though we listened to the vendor because we're considered the first in the United States in the cloud for the entire suite of Ariba modules. We listened to them, we learned from them, but I actually, 18 months later, they learned from us because we had the same people implementing all the modules at the same time. So we were running from one area to the other because we had leads helping us design and configure. So if I had to do differently, I would do 2 modules at a time, and I would not go through the same sequential order of the life cycle of a contract, but by where the biggest benefits are. For us, since we had $2 billion worth of contracts already in place, for us, the P2P module to transact for our contracts already established was the low-hanging fruit. So in sourcing, we are behind, but the value we have shown, everybody's embracing and adapting and adopting Ariba because of the value we showed where they got the significant benefit in the customer base rather than us.
Great.
So I would say focus on one problem that you want to solve, not all of them. So once you zero in on what problem you want to solve first, go to the supplier community and get their input. Have them come in and do demos. And you can do all of this as long as you're not working on an active procurement. Go to the market because really they are the experts in whatever it is that you need to buy. At least in government purchasing, I think we need to turn to the supplier community to see what's the best in breed, what's out there, and then once we have a perspective, we can start gathering our own requirements and put together what we need, and we'll be better educated at that point to do so.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, so initially I started to focus on an internal process or an external process where I wanted to facilitate interactions between customer agencies selling laptop, desktop computers, and I realized too many stakeholders. So then I said, what process do I control end to end, and what process do I control end to end that my industry partners see? My objective is to automate and digitize that business process in 8 weeks. Industry partners actually see that business process. They interact with that business process. They're a customer in a sense of that business process. I'm gonna have a lot better luck of them actually, being able to achieve this project than me writing out a bunch of requirements. And I think the second thing, guys, is nobody has used blockchain like in the entire world the way that we used it. Gartner told me that it couldn't be done. Everybody internally told me that it couldn't be done. I mean, when I initially talked about it to the deputy secretary's staff, they laughed. They said it wasn't scalable, even though there's 90 million Bitcoin wallets in the world and, a couple $100 billion transacted between them. But, actually getting in, it's not about technology, it's about the business process and getting an understanding of how to attack that business process. Technology is just an enabler. So don't overly focus on researching and understanding the technology. Spend more of your time on what's the challenge of this business process, how can I improve it, and what can enable that improvement. If you get into that mindset, it makes it a lot easier.
Yes, please.
Just piggybacking off what Jose just said, don't take no for an answer. So if somebody tells you no, it can't be done, or we're not allowed to do that, go ask somebody else. Because there's a lot of people to ask in government. So go ask somebody else. For me, what really helped too was having legal be my ally and be my business partner, and having a relationship with them where they tell me what I can and cannot do, but I'll decide what we should do. And so if somebody tells you no, go ask somebody else. Even within our legal group, if one lawyer tells me no, I'll go ask another one.
And I'll jump in and I'm sure, I hope everybody agrees with this. When you get a win on something and you can sell the living you-know-what out of it, celebrate it, tell everybody about the win, particularly if you can back it up with an efficiency, numbers, anything. Sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it, sell it. That's a huge part. And then you start to get that buy-in because in government, people want wins. Legislators want wins. Governors want wins. And that's been a big thing with us, letting governors announce new products, new technologies, and having them celebrate our successes with us. That just helps with that buy-in.
That's great. There's a lot of great advice in there. What I really like about it is that, all of you had kind of the common stream of you can do it, keep it simple, you can do one or two things, focus on one problem. And I think that's great advice for everyone here, because I think sometimes, just like a lot of large, complex, and often failed government technology implementations, right, that are very large in scope, focusing on one problem, getting out there quickly, 8 weeks, that's amazing. Right, and I think that's what I hope, and that's we all hope, that we kind of go with that mindset that we can do this faster. We don't have to wait a year and a half to do a cycle time, 1 year cycle time of an RFP before we even get out to market. So we need to just start getting out there and experimenting. With that, I'd like to turn it first to see if there are any questions here. I know some online questions are there as well. Frank, do you want to start with something that was online, and then if we can turn to here. So Frank from our team is going to read.
Great, thank you. These are questions that we had from our online audience, so there's going to be a little bit of backtrack from the earlier panel sessions. But one of the first questions we have, I think, is for Shane, and it's about how states and other municipalities are getting around any challenges with procuring from foreign vendors, or the frequency of doing that at a state-by-state level.
So great question, from a perspective of, who, in our case, we're a large enterprise tool, so we support our university community. And then, vendors from a foreign perspective, registering in our system and then being able to participate. The way we're set up right now, the way we got around that is they interact with us no different than a United States-based vendor. We do require, there's some data requirements around that. I don't know how deep you want to get into the discussion, but requiring either, if they're going to do business in the United States, that they would have an IRS-issued tax ID. There's also the ability to collect a W-8 from a W-8 bin, I think, is for the foreign vendor. We have the ability to consume that in our vendor database. And in our case, those vendors participate just like anyone else would. We're really seeing foreign vendors participate with our university community is where we see that. So it comes down to making sure you're checking some boxes from a data collection perspective, requiring a W-9 or W-8 or some sort of IRS tax identification. The worst thing you want to happen to you as a government organization is to have a foreign vendor, or honestly a domestic vendor, that is doing business with you that is somehow tied to a terrorist organization or is illegitimate. So we have instituted several data checks leveraging the IRS and some of their procedures to make sure that the businesses coming into the Commonwealth of Virginia and doing business with us are valid to do that.
Great. I know Bob Gleason, you had a question?
First of all, I wanted to thank my sister Genty up there, my brother Shane. One of the things that I think that helped, and Shane mentioned continuous improvement, is the ability to have a contract that allows for flexibility and governance between, I know Genty did a lot of stuff internally, but if you're going to have an external partner, a contract partner, you have to have a contract that is not necessarily fixed in a transactional spot way. It has to have a governance process that allows you to develop, as Shane has, a roadmap so that you can develop and plan for all of the enhancements, going forward, and then introduce them in a phased way, in a continual way over time. So like you said, Shane, you can give wins to the establishment that you're a part of. But really, to have that contract in place requires a high advanced level of contract language and processes that are part of that contract that allows that. And frankly, the profession of procurement has developed over time in a way that we can do that now, whereas 15, 20 years ago, it was very low-level thinking, tactical, spot type of contracts that did not allow for the types of relationships that now can exist with our contracts. So that's a professional development challenge that each of us has too. Thanks.
And to tailor that, Bob, to kind of trail onto that, in the situation we're in with our partner, the continuous improvement piece, so a great example of that is we started, the iPhone was only a glimmer in Steve Jobs' eyes when we started. But we were able to introduce mobile technology into our suite of tools as that became a dominant force for our constituents. Our end user base, and we developed mobile applications for both our vendor community and our buying community. And our partner worked with us to do that without any additional cost to our existing contract because of the way we were structured. That was critical for us in that concept of continuous improvement. So, and that's been a strength of our relationship with our partner, and that's one example of that would be mobile applications.
So even though Santa Clara County we implemented ourselves, we did have Ariba Consulting, and so we didn't have a external consulting firm to broker between Ariba and County of Santa Clara. However, there's many benefits to what we have done. Like I said, we wish we had a PMO to guide us. But other than that, I think we had a very good relationship. The way I actually wrote the contract, and I had it a fixed fee, made operational whatever I wanted because we were the first ones. So Ariba has kept their word, and we worked as one team because we worked with Ariba, SAP, DocuSign, procurement, finance, IT, and the hospital. So we were 105 people, and we actually worked in putting the entire roadmap all the way through 2020 right now. And we are also looking at our technology upgrade and partnering with Ariba, and also the beauty that we have with our partner, not an implementer, is we are sitting in Silicon Valley in the Innovation Center with Ariba and designing the sourcing module with the Chief Product Officer. Because I called them and said, look, we need some other regulations that we need to address, and they invited us, and we are now partners with them. That's huge. That's huge, right? So if they have to be able to deliver to a new industry, then that's not only one way through an implementer. It could go many ways.
Raj?
Great. Ann?
Hi, Jenny. When you looked at the best value process, you said you added back in the market research step. Were there any steps you eliminated because you decided they were completely worthless?
Yes. Yeah. So some of the kind of forms and sign-offs that were required in the process we eliminated. One example is early in the process, an agency has to request, we have to post that we have a notice of forthcoming procurement coming up. We post it to our e-marketplace. So that would happen. And then shortly thereafter, if the agency wanted to request delegation and justify why they thought they should lead the procurement rather than the central procurement group, they would fill out another form and route that for approval. And the form was almost exactly the same as the first form, with just a couple additional fields in there. So we combined the two forms into one. And when I first started, it was funny because I would get the one request routed, and then like hours later I would get the second one, and I thought I was going crazy. Like, didn't I just approve that? And I was like, oh, it's two different forms. And why is this two different forms? So, and the agencies hated it too. Like, they were just filling out their name, their email. It had fax number on there. Like, who uses, what's a fax machine? So, we combined the forms and we removed information that nobody cares about. So those are some of the things that's just one example of where we cut out some of the bureaucracy of the process.
That was great. I actually had a form to fill out the other day which had a required field for a fax number. So, Frank, was there anything else related to this panel from online?
I think this is a quick one for Ginny. What tool are you using to automate your RFP process? Somebody in the audience did want to know that.
Okay. We are using we bought 2 modules, Sourcing Director and Total Supplier Manager, from the Jagger suite, formerly known as SciQuest.
Great. Other questions? Yes.
Hi, Jenny. I'm Lisa with Virginia. We're in the process of been looking and working towards it with expanding those that respond electronically for RFPs and IFBs and that rollout. How or what tips or strategies did you all use to roll that out throughout Pennsylvania?
To roll out the technology tool?
To the receipt of bids and responses to proposals electronically and getting your end users to change that process too, from a paper process that they were accustomed to an electronic tool.
So one of the things that we did early on, as we were evaluating tools to automate the process, is we started accepting electronic submissions before we had the tool. So we would have them send in their proposals on a flash drive, and then we'd make copies and distribute it out to the team, because the files were often too big for email. So we started changing or refreshing the kind of the attitude before we even went live with the tool. So I guess taking baby steps. So we got people used to not having paper proposals, but if they still wanted paper, they could print it out. And so that really helped. And then we put together training courses to roll out to the agency customers on how to use, so what is the new RFP process? And then how do you do it in Jagger? So it's not just Jagger training, it's because the process is different too. The market research, I mean, that's not Jagger, that's just, going online and researching. So training is key. Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, just moving the buying community is, I think, what we found sometimes the most difficult struggle. The vendors are ready to respond electronically, but it's getting that buyer community to transition over.
Yeah. So training is key, and I've been talking about this for a year and a half. So every quarter we bring all the agencies in for kind of procurement training and kind of workshop. So I've been talking about this to them for a year and a half, so that when we started doing it, it wasn't new to them. So sort of slowly acclimating them to what's coming to help with the refreshing of a new process.
One of the things on sourcing, it's easy for the procurement community to learn how to use the system as well as educate the suppliers. The project manager can be very efficient in using the system, but the evaluation committee, if you want them to actually participate, provide their input, their strengths and weaknesses and stuff, which could cause problems in the protest process if it's not done well. And once it's transparent, you cannot erase it, like in the manual process. So that's where the complexity and the agility comes in, how you are going to teach every single evaluation committee who's going to be unique to that particular RFP and may never do it again, maybe once in a lifetime. Right?
So I think carving out, kind of cutting out pieces that we could start to help people to change and adopt before we even launched the technology tool was helpful in the success. So we changed that NFP and delegation form early and went live with it. We started teaching them how to do supplier research and rolled that out. Then we created the supplier forum concept, and we did mock forums in front of the agency procurement folks. And then we actually had our Commonwealth Media Services group come in and videotape us and take an hour-long segment and put it into a 12-minute video clip that we then gave out to the agencies so they could watch how to do a forum if they saw the mock, but then it was 6 months till they had to do it themselves and they forgot what to do, so they could watch the video. And so all those little pieces we've been giving to them ahead of time, And then as they come to go through the new RFP training, all of it put together, they're seeing a lot of it for the second time.
Great. I have a question here. And we can take one more. I'm just going to ask in 1 minute or less. I like to give times. What was your most unexpected lesson? It's something, there's a lot of things that we've heard that you at least anticipate somewhat. You may not know how difficult it is going to be, but what was really unexpected? Jose, since you started with something very different and I think something that we can all learn from.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Everybody wants to, they all want to access the system and they want to engage with it. Well, it's automated. So, they're like, well, can we get into it and can we play around with it and tell you if it actually meets our need? And it's like, you don't understand it. It's actually automated. If you want to test it, you can look at the information that was submitted and look at the information that is up on your screen at the end of the process and test that it's the same information.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to, and I didn't expect that. So then, we had designed case studies around critical thinking skills that we need, like Harvard Business case studies around critical thinking skills that we needed our 1102s to have. If we're going to free up all this time for them, well, then we got to make sure that we engage them in another form or fashion. And, so we're walking them through some of that, which I think are very interesting. I mean, I'll share them with you. And we kept coming back to, well, I'd really like to just log into the system and see if I could. And I didn't anticipate that. I didn't expect it. And it's a really hard thing to explain to somebody that, like, it's not you don't interact with it.
Yeah.
It does it for you.
Yeah. I still don't understand it, but maybe we can see it for real.
I'll send you the demo.
Jen, what was the lesson you learned?
The lesson I learned
unexpected lesson
was I think I'm a very passionate procurement professional, but after I finished implementation, the most unexpected thing was my staff did not embrace Ariba or the transformation as much as my clients did, and the unexpected realization on my part was I was so customer focused. My staff are my customer, like the vendors and the departments, but somehow I missed that to give them all of the stuff that was going on, the excitement, and that was the first unexpected. And the second one is going into this in the cloud, and the vendors sell this a SaaS solution as it's not a, you don't have a blueprint and you have a full-blown implementation of 18 months and stuff. It's an Amazon-like setting. I really thought it was an Amazon-like setting. The unexpected thing was behind the scenes, we never know what Jeff Bezos did to put all those catalogs. And I learned the hard way that, I would like to go meet the Amazon people next to find out how I could make that more efficient and agile than what it is right now. So that was unexpected for me.
Great. Jenny?
Yeah, I would say I wasn't expecting to have to be such a salesperson to my own team, not just the agency customers, but my own team. So, putting my sales hat on every single day and selling the value to my own team. And so strong leadership is important, but also to be humble and to constantly have that sales hat on. I wasn't expecting people to cling to the past quite so vigorously when they had been complaining about the process and how long it takes. But my husband reminded me that it's human nature that people cling to the past because he still has boxes of cassette tapes in the basement that he refuses to get rid of. So it is human nature and just, being humble and yet salesy and constantly, convincing people that this is the right thing to do. Even people that you thought were already convinced.
Yes.
And I think mine is very, very similar to Jenny's. After all the success all the reports, public spend forum, and the and all the different things you hear, and all the organizations we're involved with. How dare there still be critics out there of what we're doing? I mean, it's a funny, laughable take on it, but it's really a take on what Jenny said. It's everybody wants it until you show up at their door and they're like, oh, you want us to do it now? You're going to implement to us? Oh, no. We like the old way. We're fine. That's the thing that was unbelievable to me, and that goes back to the mantra I had before. When you get that win, sell the living daylights out of it, because you need to get those folks on board. So that it's really a take on what Jenny said. That was, and it's, what? And to this day, it's still surprising as we introduce new things and new technology where the critics come out of the woodwork. So you've just got to keep your head down and keep plugging, show the value, and keep fighting and keep selling. So
if you read Satya Nadella's, the CEO of Microsoft, book Hit Refresh, it just came out a few weeks ago. He writes about Microsoft being a very bureaucratic situation where he had to take the 150 senior leaders and tell them to just change. And in his exact words, it was something about the rose petals and, to the point where embrace and be there for your team and make sure your leadership is enabling and have empathetic humility to transform your organization rather than complain all the time. So I think we have to take that role and be the rose petal in a pile of shit, is what he said.
I was waiting for that word.
That was a great way to end.
I know. Well,
Sorry, I've been reading a lot.
you took away my... I was going to say
Jason
that.
Pierce, Bob, Michael Fischetti, now it's Satya Nadella.
Well,
What Silicon Valley does to you.
This is great. So thank you. I'll just say one takeaway for everyone that I'd suggest. As a consultant who's advised tons of organizations, I will say that this, we're talking about change management and everybody's emphasizing it, which is great. I will say that that's the number one thing that most people put no, even if they hear it all the time, I can guarantee it. And you will probably end up doing the same thing. I'll just say that nobody puts much time, effort, thought, or money behind change. And you learn it the hard way. Right. And so I will say it over and over. I have not seen any place where there's been enough thought put in to change ahead of time, because I guess it's one of those things, like to say, when you're about to be a parent first time, that you've heard it all, but you don't really know it till the first day the baby's keeping you up all night, right? And maybe that's what it is. You don't really know it until you experience the pain. So thank you so much. This was really enlightening for everybody, and thanks so much.